Greetings and welcome, everyone. I am
Hello.
Dr. Wolf, and today I am joined by both Mad Munchkin, you want to say hi,
Hi.
as well as my brother Teric Dragon.
Hi there.
And with the recent release of WoW Classic, World of Warcraft Classic, I admit I was somewhat tempted to try getting back into that game. And that really made me want to discuss World of Warcraft, how it affected our lives back in the 2000s, and how incredibly fun it was, especially when you could play with other people you know, and yet how it completely dominated every ounce of free time just to make you feel like you were getting somewhere in that game.
I'm not sure I completely agree with that, but yeah, I want to hear your reasoning. But anyway, we'll get into that.
Anyways, for those of you who don't know, World of Warcraft, it is a Blizzard game that is a massively multiplayer online RPG. And at its peak, it had well over 10 million subscribers who were consistently logging in and consistently playing all over the world. It was a truly massive game for its time. It's not anywhere near as popular nowadays, and I suppose that's part of the reason why Blizzard released WoW Classic as a way of, hey, you can go back and play World of Warcraft just how it was back in 2004, 2005. And that
Go ahead.
And that brought a lot of interest back into the game, I suppose.
Just FYI, the current estimated subscription level is hovering around 5 million. Blizzard has stopped releasing numbers on how many subscribers they have, which is not really a good sign. 5 million subscribers is still a pretty hefty player base. There are some MMORPGs that never got above the million mark, and World of Warcraft has been sitting comfortably in that level for a decade and a half now. So that's still very impressive.
It's hard to believe that WoW came out 15 years ago. Oh my gosh.
Wasn't it 2004?
Yeah, it was 2004.
Yeah,
November of
2004.
2004. It's been 15 years. That's nuts.
No.
Come now, Miss Munchkin. You're not even close to as old as Teric and I are.
I'm only a couple of years
Speak
younger
for yourself.
I'm only a couple of years younger than you guys. So.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes. Speak for yourself, Wolfie.
Uh-huh.
I still have my World of Warcraft Cataclysm guidebook.
Ooh.
I have it in my hand right now, and I was looking it over earlier just to refresh my mind a little bit because it has been a long time since I've played this game. So, sorry if I'm interjecting, I'm not sure if there's a structure here.
No. Yeah, it's kind of the way that the conversation ends up going.
Free-form discretion.
Oh, okay.
I think we should probably start by talking about, well, each one of us in turn, we could talk about what got us into MMO games to begin with, and then what brought us on particularly to the World of Warcraft, and what why did we enjoy World of Warcraft as opposed to some of these other MMOs out there.
Well, Teric, I believe you started with MMOs before either of us did, so let's hear your take on it.
All right, well, let's turn the clock back 20 years. Back to 1999. I was recently, let's see, I was within my first couple of years of marriage. We were living in Houston at the time. And I looked at a game called Ultima Online. Ultima Online was put out by Origin Systems at the time, and it was based on the Ultima world created by Lord British.
You played so many of the Ultima games leading up to that point too, didn't you?
I did. I loved Ultima to death. I mean, the world was really intriguing to me, and I had really grown attached to it. So when they came out with a MMO of the Ultima world, I got really excited. However, there were some serious problems. They were the very first graphical MMO that became super popular, and they had over 100,000 players at one point. And they did not know. They actually had to learn a lot of hard lessons about what happens when you get a lot of these players together. And they had unrestricted player versus player in that game. And it turned out that the entire game became a slog of a grief fest, because you had a certain number of players that didn't care if they made the game horrible for everybody else. They thought the way to have the most fun was to kill and steal and annoy every other player that they could. You know the type. Yeah, you're laughing.
Oh, because I'm just just the scripture. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and deny. Sorry.
Yes. At any rate, so I actually never played Ultima Online, because when I started reading the horror stories, I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So then there was another game that came out that actually they were the first one to split worlds. They had some worlds that were unrestricted PvP, and they had other worlds that were strictly PvE. And this game was called Asheron's Call. I got into Asheron's Call, and I was amazed at the whole prospect of having thousands of players online all at the same time, and you're all inhabiting the same world, and you can get together and create guilds and have friends and go on adventures with partners, and you take a whole group into a dungeon and everybody ends up dying, and then you get together as a group and say, okay, how are we going to do that better next time? I loved that whole thing. From Asheron's Call, I went into the original EverQuest, played that for a couple of years. Then I made the colossal mistake of playing Star Wars Galaxies. And then it was, gosh, I can't even remember the name. It was a King Arthur themed MMO. But then from there, in 2004, I jumped into World of Warcraft. What brought me into World of Warcraft, having had, by that point, I had 5 years of experience with MMO games. World of Warcraft, it was appealing to me because you had the aspect of, you had so many thousands of players together, you could make friends and you could go on adventures together, but it was at the same time very solo friendly. And what I mean by that is, if you go back to EverQuest, there's a certain point you can go to solo. And then once you get around level 50, 51 or close to there, it becomes extremely difficult to gain any experience unless you're in a group. And then if you were like me, married with children, and couldn't dedicate 3, 4, or 5 hours to do the group raids, then there was really very little chance for me to gain experience. And so when I switched over to World of Warcraft, I found that it really opened up the world for a solo player like me. Honestly, World of Warcraft was the first game that I took a character from the beginning clear up to the level cap, which at the time it was level 60. I had never hit the level cap in any other game. So I enjoyed it a lot at first.
Well, Maddie, why don't you tell us your experiences of getting into WoW?
It was probably around the time when I was at college the first time, when I was doing my Bachelor Honours degree in Contemporary Fine Art. I wouldn't consider myself a hardcore gamer or anything, but I wasn't a completionist or anything, but we did do a lot of multiplayer games, back when multiplayer meant you play with someone in the same room as you.
I remember that.
Yeah, because I was at college and I was working as well, I was looking for just something to just dive into for just to unwind, because I'm definitely a casual gamer. I'm not all that competitive as a person, so MMORPGs like Warcraft, or I actually started playing RuneScape before Warcraft. And for me, I really enjoyed, I'm a solo gamer as well, just like you, Teric. So for me, Warcraft was perfect in that regard. There's just a massive world to just explore at your own pace. I love sandbox games like these, and you can just take your time and just enjoy the atmosphere of the world that you're inhabiting. You can play different classes, but as much as I loved all the quests and being part of a guild, my favorite part of Warcraft it was actually the professions. I really liked, developing your skills like blacksmithing or alchemy or anything like that, and then the things you make you can sell on to other players. So, back when I was at college, early 20s or whatever, I was still learning about how to, for want of a better phrase, sell yourself. This game actually helped me learn that without actual real money being involved. So from that point of view, the whole market thing in the game, I adored that. That got me so excited. I don't know, I don't really understand why, but it did. I actually got into Warcraft because of my dad. And it's a funny story. My dad was really into strategy games like Age of Empire and other similar games. And my gran, when she was still alive, she bought him the expansion pack for Warcraft. I believe what was the first expansion pack for Warcraft again?
That was Burning Crusade.
Burning Crusade, yes.
It was either Burning Crusade or it might have been Lich King. I'm not sure, but she didn't know what it was. She just saw a fantasy game that she thought my dad would like. So, of course, that was the expansion pack. So he had to buy the actual game. So he did, and he got into it and told me, "Hey, you should play it a game. You like games. You should play it as well. You like games like this." And I was like, I don't know. Does it look like my kind of thing? And, and my sister was really into Lord of the Rings Online, and she was boycotting Warcraft completely, saying, "Oh, Lord of the Rings Online is so much better." I don't know if you guys had ever played that, but yeah,
I've played Lord of the Rings Online.
Yeah, I got into Warcraft because of my dad, long story short, but I think he was doing more quests and missions and stuff, and I was just developing my professions as much as I was the quests. I did have one main character that was a Blood Elf Hunter, so I was on the Horde side. Haha.
Oh no!
I know, I'm sorry. Unfriended, right? Okay. I did have a few other characters, but they escaped my memory at the moment, but that was my main character. So, sadly, when Cataclysm came out, for those of you that are familiar with the game, you'll understand why I'm going to say the following. I stopped playing it once Cataclysm came out because it basically ruined the Hunter class, and it felt a bit like, not that there's anything wrong with Pokemon, but it just felt like the Hunter class just was a Pokemon hunter, and all the hunters were looking for the rarest animals to have and stuff, and just the actual stats for a hunter completely changed for when you're in dungeons and raids and stuff, and it just really killed my enjoyment of the game as a whole, which is a shame. But it was also the fact I was near the end of college, 4 years, and I really couldn't justify all the time I was spending on it or all the money I was spending on it either. And I had to make the decision that I just had to stop playing it, and it was quite difficult to stop. So, and after I did, it was around the time I ended college, I was getting into more freelance work with studios and stuff, and I think I mentioned this to you, Teric, at BronyCon very briefly, that I had quite a bad experience working for a gaming studio, sadly. And
you did say something about that, yes.
I don't want to go into detail about that in this call, but it really killed my enjoyment for games for a long time. And I only really recently got back into gaming properly because of my fiance. So yeah, Warcraft was pretty much the last game I played, at least online anyway. I do play Skyrim and the Fallout games and a few others, but Warcraft was my game.
Go Bethesda!
Yeah! Warcraft was my game for so long, and yeah, it was such a big part of my life. And my dad's, but he stopped playing it too. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll stop.
What about you, Doc?
Yes.
What got you into World of Warcraft?
Well, like you, Teric, World of Warcraft was not the first MMORPG I ever tried. I actually did, with your encouragement, get into EverQuest. And that lasted for several months, I think. But there reached a point in EverQuest when I was trying to do one very lengthy quest in order to get a piece of armor for my character.
Which class were you?
Oh, I was playing a monk.
Okay.
And I can't remember the name of the species. It was the reptile species.
Ixar.
Ixar, whatever it is. Okay. Yeah. And it required you to go to 4 separate locations around the main city and kill like 20 or 30 or even 40 various creatures in order to get a certain number of items that you needed to turn in. And I spent so many hours on just this one quest, feeling like I want to accomplish something. I don't want to just go around killing for the sake of killing. I want to feel like, hey, I've done something that took effort. And when I turned everything in, nothing happened.
What?
And I couldn't understand why at first until I realized, oh, wait. I had to turn in the little scroll that he gave me to start the quest along with all these items that I had spent so many hours completing.
So were they all wasted?
It was all wasted. Every bit of it
gosh.
was wasted. I put in all that effort, and because the quest system in that game is the way it is, it just allowed me to turn in all these items and not give me anything and not tell me what I had done wrong. I had to figure it out for myself. And it was at that point, this is so stupid. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
That's what caused me to stop EverQuest. Now, what initially interested me in World of Warcraft is because I actually cared about the world and the characters in it. I never had that feeling with EverQuest because I had no idea about anything in the world of the characters. I was just trying an MMORPG for my first time. However, I had been an avid Blizzard fan for years. I played the original Warcraft, Warcraft 2, Diablo, StarCraft, Diablo 2, Warcraft 3, all the expansions. I loved all the worlds that Blizzard created, the characters, and especially the gameplay. I had a lot of high praise for everything they created.
Shall we not get into the multiplayer matches that you and I had in StarCraft?
That is an entirely different discussion. Focus on World of Warcraft, because I know you and I could talk about StarCraft multiplayer for a while.
We could. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyways, I was fascinated by this ginormous world that felt lived in when I first got into World of Warcraft. And I would do quests not only to gain XP and treasure and maybe a piece of armor or weapon or whatever, but I wanted to see what else there is in the world to explore, what kind of stories I could discover, and even some intricacies in why the dungeons had the bosses that they did. In a lot of other games, you'd find a boss and see it just a big challenge and try to get over it and get to the next challenge. In World of Warcraft, they were actually creating stories for each of the dungeons, and especially the quests associated with those dungeons. And I just wanted to keep doing more and more and more. It's so fun. And it was made even better when I had people I could play with consistently. And yes, back in the day, I tried so hard to find time for me and Teric to play together. And that was difficult because he was married, he had kids, he had a life.
It was tough, but we did get to play. I mean, even our younger brother Chris played with us for a little while.
Yeah, that was during late Burning Crusade, early Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah.
He played with us. And that was so wonderful to feel like I was socializing while playing a game.
Yeah.
But that, in turn, was part of the eventual problem that I had with World of Warcraft.
All right. So before you go on with that, Doc, let's save the let's postpone that and talk about why we quit. Amy's kind of already gotten into hers, but I mean, what were the problems that we found with World of Warcraft? Let's talk about what we liked about it and what kept us playing for as long as it did. I did want to ask you, Doc, what you were on Alliance side, weren't you?
I did Alliance and Horde, and I did a whole list in the Skype chat like a couple weeks ago where Amy was reading how many characters I came up with. I had a Tauren warrior that I got above level 50. I had a gnome warlock that I got all the way to level 60. I had, what else? A human mage up to 60, a gnome rogue up to 60, a night elf druid up to 60. I made a Tauren druid that I got above 50. I had a Draenei shaman, a Tauren shaman. I made a dwarven hunter. Goodness, I tried everything in that game because I loved figuring out these are really complex characters you can play and figuring out which abilities synergize with others. That was fascinating to me. I love that. Yeah. But that was part of the problem, which I will get into later.
All right. How about you, Maddie? What characters did you play? You said you had your main character. It was on Horde, but it was a hunter, right?
My main character was a blood elf hunter, and that I don't know. I just loved the blood elves, and I did have a few other characters, but they were mainly for farming other things or just playing when I got fed up with my blood elf or whatever. So I had an undead. I can't.
Forsaken.
Never played a human. Night elf, and there was the worgen. I did have a worgen character, but that was more because I loved the design, not so much
of the race.
The design of the race and how it was animated, etc. And that I thought the blood elves were so beautiful, and so that was my favorite class race. Even that. Did I have a goblin? No, I had a female orc character who was awesome. Never had a Tauren. I loved the troll class. I had I think the troll race that I had, he was also a hunter, and I got one of those it was I can't remember the name of the creature, but it was basically an albino T-Rex, and I called it Cuddles.
Awesome. Yeah.
I didn't have nearly as many characters as Doc did, but mainly because I just stuck with my Blood Elf Hunter, which was probably one of the mistakes I made, that I didn't really explore enough of the other races. I just loved the story. I loved the bird mounts that those guys get. I just thought they looked so silly.
Yeah.
It reminded me, not that I played the games much beyond the first 3, but it reminded me of the Final Fantasy games.
Oh, yes.
But I only played the first 3, so yeah. Yeah, so what kept me hooked to it, probably that it was a game that myself and my dad enjoyed. So that was mainly what kept me playing, really.
All right. For me, when I started playing, I created a Night Elf Hunter. Yeah, my first character that I ever created was an Orc Hunter. And then I played him for one day, and then I said no, I want to go Alliance, so I created a Night Elf Hunter, and that became my main. Clear up through, from 2004 through 2011, he was my main character, and I like you, I really enjoyed the Hunter class. I remember there was a point where they allowed you to you could only have like 2 or 3 pets at first as a hunter, but then they got to a point where they had like a storage unit, yeah, where you could get as many pets as you wanted, and you could just store them off and trade them out whenever you wanted to. Mm-hmm. And that's when it started feeling a lot more like Pokemon. So I had my Night Elf Hunter that I got him up to the level cap. I had another night elf druid that I really liked. I used him because I would dual class him. So if people needed a healer, I would switch him over to healer spec. If people needed a tank, I would switch him over to tank spec, and I could go back and forth. So if they needed a tank or a healer, I could always get into a group, and I loved it that way. That was great. I had a human paladin that I got him up to the level cap. I had a Tauren shaman that I got up over level 50, and I had a Worgen paladin that I also got up to over level 50. Other than that, I think I had a dwarf priest that I got her up past level 40, but I didn't really play her all that much. But yeah, I explored a lot of the different things that you could do in that game, and like Doc, I enjoyed the synergies between the different abilities and being able to make yourself stand out as a class. One of the things that I really liked about the hunter that unfortunately they got rid of later, but the hunter used to be really good with if you wanted to go out and pull a group of monsters to the party. The hunter was so good at that because he could drop a trap down and he could freeze one of them, and then he could pull the other ones to the group. And if it went really badly, then the hunter could do that feigned death thing, and then all the monsters would just go back to what they were doing before they came and killed the party. And the hunter was so good at doing something like that. And then later on, I think when Wrath of the Lich King came out, they got rid of that, and the hunter just it became just another class that could do damage. That's really all it was. And that made me sad because the hunter class really didn't stand out anymore. But but talking about what I really liked about World of Warcraft, I'd said before that it's very solo friendly, but at the same time it had a lot of content that you could do with groups, getting into guilds and working together with your guild mates. That was a lot of fun. Questing together, getting together with friends and just going out and doing the normal in-world quests, doing those together. That was really cool. And then, like Doc, having played all of the Warcraft titles before World of Warcraft, I got to the point where I knew a lot of the characters, I knew a lot of the stories. What I really enjoyed was seeing the events that happened in the first 3 Warcraft titles, and then going into World of Warcraft and seeing the aftermath of all of that. For example, when Arthas, when he went to the human city, what was it called?
Stratholme?
Was it? No, it wasn't Stratholme. It was the where he went and murdered his father.
Oh, that would be Lordaeron.
Lordaeron, thank you. So you in Warcraft 3, you see Arthas when he was just still human, but he was ready. He had already turned evil. He was on the verge of becoming the Lich King. He walked into his father's city. He had this hero's welcome. People were throwing rose petals on him. He walked into the main chamber, bowed before his father, and his father says, "Welcome home, you're a hero, son." And then Arthas stands up and stabs his father through the heart. And you see that, and it's just horrifying what happened. And then in the World of Warcraft, you can go to Lordaeron, and the whole city is completely ruined now, and it's inhabited by nothing but the undead now. And it's to see the aftermath and the results of a lot of the things that happened in the series. Go into the World of Warcraft and see that these events actually happened, and you can see what happened afterward, and continue on with the story. That was fascinating. I loved that.
Well, do you think we're ready to start discussing the negatives of WoW?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead, Doc?
Well, like I mentioned at the start, it was the release of WoW Classic where I felt a little temptation to get back into the game and relive those old days playing and having so much fun with it. There's always going to be a small part of me that wants to go back and play WoW again. And that's honestly a real issue that I've had with the game for so very long now. As great a game as it is, if you wanted to get to the high levels, you had to devote so much time to every one character. If you wanted to see the really cool content, especially with the story beats, like you said, Teric, you wanted to see what happens to these characters and where they go and what they've done. It's the high level content that provides answers to those story beats. So you feel like you want to explore the world. You feel like you want to improve upon your skills. You want to go dungeoneering with a bunch of people. And it is exceptionally fun and memorable to do.
Yeah.
However, I think I mentioned earlier that I really, really, really enjoyed the social aspects of playing an MMORPG.
Yes.
Joining a guild, and every time you log in, you say, "Hi, everybody," and everybody says, "Oh, hey, Doc," because, yeah, even back then, I was known as Dr. Wolf.
He had the initial. He had the initials Dr. Wolf, clear back in the 90s.
And feeling like there were people who were looking forward to seeing me and playing with me and chatting with me and all kinds of things back then, because that was pretty much all I had for socializing. I didn't have any friends that I could really spend time with in real life back then. It was after my college days. I was trying to start my new career, but I hadn't really found any social group. And this really filled that niche, that necessary feeling of that you belong somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that's a real danger that I didn't realize at the time, that you start spending more and more and more of your free time in WoW, more than just for the gameplay. You feel like you want to interact with other people. And it got to the point where I would spend my entire day barely setting a foot outside of my computer room. I would feed myself, and occasionally I'd feel like I needed to run an errand, but that's where my priority lied. It was going back to play that game, because I didn't feel like there was anything in my real life that could really measure up to the feeling that game gave me. It filled that need for social life. It filled that need for feeling like you were accomplishing something grand. Mm-hmm. And that's a real danger that I worry about even today for so many people, and not just in playing MMORPGs. There are so many kinds of video games that fill that same niche, where people don't want to deal with real life because they aren't taking the time to train themselves, to gain that knowledge and wisdom and experience, and actually interacting with people and accomplishing challenging things, because they have this video game in front of them, and that's fulfilling that need, where there's a very defined set of rules, and as long as you figure out the intricacies of certain skills, you can overcome any challenge and feel accomplished.
Yeah. So you're actually getting into the more the psychology of and not just gaming, but it also covers television, movies, books, comic books, and a lot of these other things that they have very, very similar issues where people will become they have this addictive like behavior because a lot of their social needs are fulfilled doing this thing with just interacting with a screen. And so I can see that problem coming up where you end up dedicating so much of your life to it that the rest of your life just kind of withers away.
Yeah.
So now that we've gotten into somewhat of a dark spot, let's move on. So Maddie, why don't you elaborate on what was it that you did not like about World of Warcraft? What eventually got you to leave the game?
Similar to what Doc's already touched upon, talking about kind of developing a false sense of accomplishment, and this kind of laid in. It was very similar to what Doc was saying about. I was in a similar situation. You know, I was coming up to the end of college, and my social circle was changing. People were moving on, or they were moving away, or just various things, life changes and stuff. And I was struggling to find work in my field that I was qualified to do. So I was trying to find other ways to fulfill that want, that I was like, I really need to feel I belong with a group of people. I need to find people that are like-minded like myself, and I was finding that in some sense in Warcraft, and I was finding myself I was being too reliant upon that for getting my social life fulfilled. And I wouldn't say I was addicted to the game, but I was more just addicted to the fact that that was really the only place I was getting a social life from, or at least that was how I felt, because the friends I had at the time, they weren't into games. They weren't really into all of the, for want of a better phrase, nerdy stuff. So they were into all, like, when I was at college with them, they would be really heavily into art history, and they would go to art galleries and all this other stuff, and I loved art, but that wasn't really the field I wanted to get into. I didn't want to get into contemporary fine art. I wanted to get into more conceptual art. It was that moving away to what I had devoted 4 years of my life to, discovering I don't really want to do that anymore. So then I was finding people in Warcraft that were into similar things as me, but unfortunately one of the reasons I stopped playing was because the guild I was in, I don't know if you guys had experienced this at any point, but basically we were in a guild and we were like storing stuff together in our bank, and people just deposited whatever, and one day we would log in and all the stuff was gone.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, what's happened? Trying to figure out, maybe there's a new storage thing. So I messaged people, and they told us basically a member had just stolen all of our stuff and moved on to another guild and taken all the stuff with them.
Oh.
So yeah.
No.
So
Ouch.
So you can imagine, I found it very difficult to trust people in Warcraft after that. And it kind of started to affect me being able to trust people in real life as well. So I was like, this is really affecting me on a deeper level than I realised. To avoid that from happening again, I felt like the best thing for me would be to stop playing, because of that happened, but also it's very difficult to stop when you've devoted so much time to it. And, when you finish college, your routine, you're in this routine and safety bubble of college, and then it suddenly stops and people move on, and then you're just like, well, what am I going to fill my time with now? I'm not working full time. I need something else. And yeah, and it was just a time of just self-reflection for a little while after I stopped playing the game.
I can see that. Yeah. Wow. So both of you actually have some pretty some deep down inner reasons why you chose to stop playing the game. It seemed like you had to overcome something pretty strong in your life in order to pull yourself away from the game. My reason for leaving the game is anything quite so tragic. Um, yeah, well, no, let me put it this way. I worked in my job in California from 2004 until February of 2011, when there was the company I was working for lost a pretty big contract, and they had to come and lay off half of the company in one day. And so I got laid off. And so without any income, I couldn't pay for the game anymore. So I had to shut down the game. I stopped playing it. It was in June of 2011 that I got hired at my current job, and I thought, okay, I can go back and I can start playing again. But during the several months in between, I came to the realization, kind of like you guys did, I came to the realization that for all of my accomplishments in World of Warcraft, what do I really have to show for it? There really wasn't anything to show for it. And so, I felt, when I was in the game, I felt powerful. I felt like I had accomplished all these cool things, and I had, some of these really cool flying mounts, and I had high-level characters, and I could do high-level content. And then after stopping the game for 3 or 4 months, and then I realized, what do I have to show for all of the effort that I put into this game? And there really wasn't anything I could show. I could talk about it, but in actual physical sense that I could show, there was nothing. That was the first thing. The second thing was at that point, I had my oldest son was in junior high, and all of my my youngest had just been born the previous year, so he was 1 year old. And then we went through the move, and we came from California to Dallas. And I realized, okay, my children are getting older. They need my time. My wife, being a mother of 4 children, she needs my time. And so I came to the conclusion, I cannot play a game that you cannot pause.
Yeah.
And so World of Warcraft, you can't pause that game. It goes on without you. If you need to get up and you need to go take care of a child who just skinned his knee, the game's not going to stop for you. So I realized, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And so I canceled my account.
I just couldn't justify the money that I was spending on the game either. Not for the same reason as you, obviously, Teric, but yeah, it was. I was just asking myself why I was spending all this money on this game when.
Well,
yeah.
it was fun, wasn't it? It was fun.
Yeah.
And so there is something to be said about spending money and getting fun in return. There is something to be said about that. So now, have the two of you have you looked at the way that the game has progressed and changed since you left the game?
I think I probably have watched some of the cutscenes or cinematics that have popped up on YouTube from the several or so expansions that have come out since then.
Yeah.
And yeah, parts of the story seem a little interesting, but I know that I can't get back into WoW without devoting all of my free time to it and feeling like I have reason to be there other than just the gameplay. I have wanted to get back into WoW Classic because, yeah, the early game and expansions did feel different than the later ones and did feel like you had to put in more effort in order to get somewhere. And yeah, I kind of liked that. But I would much rather spend 3 or 4 hours making a YouTube video, which will forever be on YouTube and actually be something entertaining for fans and sometimes maybe even a little encouraging or inspirational. I feel like I am having a positive effect on the lives of others. Whereas if I spent that same 3 or 4 hours playing World of Warcraft, maybe I could be interacting with a few people in a guild, but it really would just be for myself because I wanted to have fun for those 3 or 4 hours.
How about you, Maddie? Have you watched the progress of the game since then?
No.
You haven't paid any attention?
No. I just didn't want anything more to do with the game, to be honest, especially after what happened with the guild I was in. But in regards to the fact that Warcraft Classic is being re-released, because, they have to milk the nostalgic cow as much as possible. I didn't really play the classic version. I got into it after the first 2 expansion packs, so the whole thing about the classic editions being re-released isn't really enticing me enough to play the game again. But also, even if I had, I doubt I would get back into it purely because I know how I'll just be, like, similar to Doc, I would just be like just spending all of my free time on it, but it just eats up so much of your time, and there's so many things now that I'm into that are far more worth my time than just that one game. There's lots of games I play now, like I play Minecraft, I play most of the Fallout games and a whole bunch of other games that I play, but I prefer to play on my own because I just sometimes, after a long day of work or whatever, you just want some time to just unwind and just explore a world while listening to a podcast or music or whatever, just for some peace, and that's just what I prefer. And I just found with Warcraft that I was very much more about solo play rather than like going on all the quests and raids and stuff. I much prefer just to be on my own. And I think, especially nowadays, maybe Teric will disagree with me here, but I feel like there's too much emphasis on multiplayer games and not enough on solo, but that's just my opinion. So, but yeah.
No arguments from me.
No interest in going back.
Yeah.
So,
on my part, I've like you, Doc. I've watched some of the cinematics. I've paid attention to some of the storyline, that how it has progressed and things. I have to admit, I got angry when I found out that Sylvanas burned down Teldrassil. Am I enticed by WoW Classic? And really, no, I'm not. I thought maybe I could get back into it and just try it, but I thought the next thought was I would probably play it for maybe a week and then I would quit. Because it's still a game. Well, I can't pause. My oldest son is now 20 years old, and my youngest is 9. And I live in a house with a bunch of teenagers who need my time. Yeah. And so when the game needs to be paused, I pause the game, and I go help my family with what they need. And so World of Warcraft just doesn't fit into that. Yeah. And in addition, spending $15 a month to play a game that I'm essentially going to be playing solo, I have to agree with you, Maddie, that I find that I enjoy the solo player, the single player games a lot more. I can enjoy getting into a multiplayer game with some friends and things, but left to my own devices, I don't jump online and play with a bunch of unknown people. That just really doesn't seem fun to me. Most of the games that I play are just single player, and I enjoy those a lot. And those types of games, you'll buy them once. You'll spend a certain amount of money to buy the game once, and then you don't have to spend $15 a month to play a single player game. So World of Warcraft, it doesn't seem worth it to me.
These days, I'm kind of a similar mindset. The amount of money I'd spend every month on World of Warcraft way back in the day, I could spend that same 1 month subscription on a video game nowadays and be able to play it for many months or even a year before I'd want to move on to something else.
Yeah.
And like you, Teric, I need to have games that I can pause. I need to have games that have a very clear start and ending point to where I can exit and get back to making YouTube videos. I don't suppose I'll ever stop playing video games entirely, having started playing when I was, 3 or 4 on the old Atari system that you had, Rob?
Yeah, I remember you stood at my side and watched me play a lot of games, and then you wanted to play, and so you got into it too. I remember.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we had one of those too.
It's fun to think about, but I can't imagine ever getting back into World of Warcraft unless I was retired and I had a lot of people I enjoyed playing with consistently right there with me. That's the only ways that I'd see that being worth it.
So I have an idea. Why don't we get into World of Warcraft Classic and we form the Geriatric Guild?
I could do that, sure.
So
we only need to wait about 30 years.
And then we could all just sit in chairs around, we create a campfire out there and we sit in chairs and we can sit and chat and then, and be these old fogies and say, get off my lawn.
Now there's an image.
See, I had an image of they were just sitting in a circle, and one person stands up, goes, "Hi, I'm Munchkin, and I'm addicted to Warcraft." Oh, that just went to a dark place, but sure. Dark humor.
Going to an Addicts Anonymous meeting for video games. The thing is, they're actually
they do exist.
Video games, in some people, it is actually inducing behaviors that are indicative of addictions, and scientists have actually been starting to study this and prove this, and so it actually is a little scary. It's
very scary, and I would love to discuss this further, but unfortunately I do need to go. So,
okay.
Shortly, because it's after 10. As much as I would love to continue talking about this, time zones suck.
Lovely. It's okay. But I'll let Doc finish us off.
Sure.
It was a very fun discussion. When I learned that you were a World of Warcraft player when we were discussing that in Skype a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking, there is so much I still want to discuss about WoW. And I know my brother has so much more he could add to the conversation. Let's just get the three of us together and get everything out, because it's still a fond memory, and yet it is still a lasting addiction in some small form.
Yeah.
But thank you both for joining.
Yeah, this was good. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for inviting me too, and thank you for giving up your time on a Saturday afternoon as well. I know you're both very busy. So
oh, this was good. I was looking forward to this.
Highly appreciated, and I'm sorry. I am so sorry I have to leave early. If I didn't have this party to go to, I would probably be here until well past midnight. Because I love talking to you guys, and I especially love talking about Warcraft. So, or just discussing anything with you guys is awesome. So,
like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, part of what we need to learn is getting out and socializing in real life, even in situations where we don't feel entirely comfortable, even if we are introverted. It's kind of important that we take those little steps and try to learn and experience and grow. So I'm grateful that you're going out to a party, and I hope you have fun.
Yeah, have fun out there, Maddie.
Good. Yeah, I'm trying, so. Okay, well, thank you guys, and I will probably try to edit this tomorrow and maybe send it to Doc, or We can discuss that at some point on what we're doing with this. So, yeah.
In due time. But until then, do take care.
You guys take care too.
Yep. Have a good night, Maddie.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.